Hey guys, Rob here, and today you join me for episode 35 of How It Was Made, and this is my rendition of the Ferrari FF with panoramic roof. Now, I was never a huge fan of the Ferrari FF, but I won this particular Hotwheels Elite model on eBay for just $60, so I thought I would see what I could do with this model. Now overall, the detail is quite good on these Hotwheels Elite models. One thing I wanted to do was put a nice beige Ferrari leather interior colour, and the exterior will be in new Daytona black, which is a metallic colour. As usual, start by disassembling all the model into its separate pieces, and the interior is quite detailed in this model. A lot of it's just lost because it's in a dark blue colour. Now, with all the stripping underway, I was able to break down all the interior parts into their separate pieces, and these will be ready to be cleaned and painted. But before I do that, I wanted to start with something simple, and that is to change the colour of the brake calipers. This was easily done by removing them, masking the discs up and spraying those in Tamiya primer and then some Tamiya chrome yellow. I then added some Ferrari decals, and that is the brake calipers done. Now, to remove the old carpeting out of the interior, I removed the product called Goo Gone. That does a great job of removing that. I could then clean all the parts with wax and grease remover. I then primed all the parts just in Tamiya white primer out of the spray can. I then airbrushed every single piece in Zero Paint's Ferrari beige colour. Now, I had this sandstone flocking powder, which is a really close colour to the paint, so I then applied all the carpeting to the desired areas. It was then followed up with the detail painting of the speaker grills, and just the little switch gear in silver, and a few more little paint touch-ups there in the rear for the cargo area. I could then reassemble the broken down parts like the door pulls, the center console, button section and the air conditioning vents. I then decided to flock the cargo area as well in the same sandstone flocking powder. After all that was dry, I then started to reassemble the interior. So these pieces were just glued back into place. Now, I didn't want to add black seat belts back to the model, so I found some 3mm wide ribbon from the local haberdashery store, and made up the new seat belts and glued those into position on the interior trim pieces. The interior is really starting to come together now, and what a difference it made from the dark blue interior. The pedals and footrest were added back into the model, and the front seats and steering column were then glued in place. So that is pretty much the interior done on this model. So as I said, what a difference it makes from the dark blue to this beige colour, and by adding the right colour carpeting, it really does look superb. I'm really happy with how that came out. One little touch I wanted to add was a little GPS screen and some pictures on the rear headrest TV screens. So I just printed out some pictures off the internet and scaled those down to size and glued them in place. Just an easy little thing to do, but wow, what a difference it made. Now it was time to look at seeing if I could add a panoramic roof into this model. So I marked out where the trim was underneath, and then this marked out the edge of where I'm to cut out the metal of the roof. I just did that with a cutting blade in the Dremel and cut that out to shape, filed the corners, and then used a piece of clear plastic conformed to the roof shape, and this looks like it's going to work at this stage. So then I put the roof trim panel in from underneath, marked the inside edge and cut that out. Now, the hinges on the hatchback were not going to work on this particular model, so this will not have an opening rear hatch. Now, I want the plastic to finish flush with the roof rails either side, so I hand filed out the perimeter edge of the roof, so that when the plastic was glued in, it would be flush with the side rails. Once all that was done, the paintwork was stripped off the model. I went down to my local paint supplier and got some Nero Daytona metallic, genuine Ferrari colour, and this is what I'm going to paint the body in. So the piece of plastic needed to have a bit of a curvature in it, so I actually put it in some boiling hot water and pressed it down into the bottom of a round bowl, and this created a curvature to the piece of plastic in all four corners. It didn't bend too much, but enough that when the roof is glued in, it's not too flat, and it does have a curvature in it. As you can see here, it does have a bit of a curvature and the corners are curved as well. Now that that was sorted out, time to work onto the interior trim panel. Because the rear section was removed, it's missing a section between the roof and the rear hatch, so I just used some styrene sheet and built up a new rear shape to the inner liner. As usual, a little bit of putty is required to blend it all together, and I was pretty happy with that. The body was then primed in some grey primer. I let that dry for a day, and then I came back, gave it a light sand and a couple of coats of the Nero Daytona Black Metallic and a couple of coats of 2K Clear over the top, and that is pretty much the paintwork done of the body. This is a really nice black colour. It's got a nice black metallic fleck in it, and I'm happy with how that came out. Once the body was painted and dried, I masked up the body just so I could paint the matte black window rubbers and window frame. And then it was time to tackle the scary part, and that was to glue the roof section in. I didn't want to mess this up as I got a really nice paint finish on the body, so I just sanded the metal down a little bit more. I then used some Tamiya smoke colour in a spray can and tinted the inside of the plastic roof, and then I glued the roof section in with some super glue. The final piece of the interior to paint was the roof lining panel, and at this stage I decided to make some little custom grab handles as well, like the real car. This is for the rear passengers to hold onto. The reflective mirror backings were then glued back into the side mirrors, and the door trims are nearly ready to glue on. But first I wanted to make some full windows for the doors. Now unfortunately I broke the standard Hot Wheels Elite windows when I removed those, but yeah, I'll be able to make some new ones. As you can see here, the roof glued on alright. I did scratch up the metal on the underside before I glued the roof in so that it had a bit more grab with the super glue, but it turned out alright. Now I needed to paint the perimeter of the roof in a matte black colour, so I just made a mask out of some painter's tape, masked up the rest of the body so I could paint the perimeter of the clear roof panel, and that would hide all the glue joins and the roughed up scratches. So that is basically how I created the panoramic roof. Now with the Hot Wheels Elite window sitting back in place, it looked okay. I'm going to make a change to that. The interior roof lining was glued back in. The door trim, or doors I should say, were screwed back on, and the hood was fitted back to the model. I then realised actually, after I screwed the dashboard in, that the interior, the trim panel of the engine had to go in, so I removed the bonnet, fitted the interior engine panel in, and then refitted the bonnet back onto the model. The front grille and front photo etch was glued back in. Side windows were cleaned and glued back in, and also glued the headlight lenses back on. Rear tail lights were glued in, as well as the rear photo etch mesh sections, and then I glued on the rear underside trim of the hatchback. Rear window of the hatchback was then glued back in place, and I added the Ferrari logo. Now these side windows, I'm just using some thin acetate sheet. I just make sure I cut them to fit the inside of the door opening, and then I just glue them back on as per the original Hot Wheels windows. I did that on both sides until I was happy with the shape, and then glued those back on, and then clipped the door trims back in place. So that is how I made full windows for this model. The inner door trim skid plates were glued back on. The floor was screwed back into the model, and it's really come along at this stage. Now I wasn't happy, as I mentioned, with the colour difference between the painted edge of the roof and the matte black surround on the front window from Hot Wheels, so I repainted the edge of the roof in a matte black so it matched the colour better of the factory Hot Wheels Elite windows. I then just sat the wheels and the brakes on to have a bit of a look, but the model is quite detailed. I then added the final touches of the Ferrari emblems and the side markers, also added some Pininfarina emblems and the front nose emblem as well. These are actually decals made by BBR models. Now I did order the factory wheels from MR Collection for this model, but they got lost in the mail, so I decided to put a custom set of wheels on this particular model, and I'm using this combination of these 20-inch front wheels and these 21-inch rear wheels. Painted them gloss black and then hand painted a diamond cut finish to the wheels, just using some Tamiya chrome silver. Wasn't quite happy with how they looked, so I added the diamond cut lip onto these wheels as well. I then glued those onto the model with the brakes as well. And overall I'm pretty happy with how the model came out, how it looks with this aftermarket set of wheels, and it makes this Ferrari FF look like something else that could not be bought, and that's how I like my models to be. I like them to be completely custom and look like nothing else that you could buy. That really makes them a one-off. But yeah, overall really happy with how the model came out. It was a real challenge to make the panoramic roof, but it was worth the effort, and I'm really happy with how that came out. So I think overall the stance, the custom wheels, the custom paint, the beautiful stunning beige interior really make this a one-off Ferrari FF. So I hope you guys enjoyed this how it was made episode of this Ferrari FF. The model was mounted on a red BBR leather base that I got from bbrmodelstore.com, but that is going to wrap up today's video. So as I said, I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribed, make sure you click that bell notification, and until next time, thanks for watching Rob's Model Cars.